We are here today to provide faculty with some information about the efforts that the school is making to assure that Smith is an accessible and inclusive environment for students with disabilities. Many of you know that we have obligations under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. But in addition to our legal obligations, our efforts here are guided by our general commitments to diversity and inclusivity, and those values frame our work. So in addition to our legal obligations, the school has also made a commitment to universal accessibility, and we will talk a little bit about what that means. It's important to learn a little bit about our legal obligations, so we're going to start there. The college is required to consider the needs of students with disabilities on an individual case-by-case basis. We established the Office of Disability Services to serve as a kind of central point of leadership and coordination for the assessment of students with disabilities needs, and to communicate the types of adjustments and accommodations that they need to faculty, to other aspects of the college. So students come to the Disability Services Office, they register with us, they may provide us with some medical information as needed to determine the kinds of accommodations and supports that will best serve their learning needs. The Disability Services Director and my staff work to make those determinations and then communicate about those things to faculty. So faculty would receive a letter from our office outlining the types of accommodations that a student must be provided. Included in that letter is a clear statement about confidentiality, something that's very important as both our obligation under the law and certainly to the best interests of our students. We are not allowed to communicate further the information that we receive in the accommodation letter, and it's important to just be mindful about speaking in a confidential place with students about those parameters. Once the Office of Disability Services has made determinations about the kinds of accommodations students receive and you receive a letter from us, it's important that if you have any concerns about those accommodations, that you speak directly to the Disability Services Office, because we will have made those determinations, not the student. We make them in collaboration with the student, but it's up to us to make those determinations, and it means that you need to communicate with us if something needs to be renegotiated. We are really not allowed to renegotiate with the students. So please let us know if there's any concerns about those letters, and we will try to work out an alternative. Students and faculty can discuss the accommodations and certainly have broader conversations about the kinds of things that would be helpful for students in class, but it's also important to remember that we are not allowed to ask students direct information about their disabilities. We cannot ask them to disclose the nature of their disability, their diagnosis, or details about their condition. We can have conversations with them about things like what would be best for them in the class, what kinds of supports or aids would best benefit them, strategies that you might employ that would make learning easier. We can certainly talk about the accommodations and talk about best teaching practices with them, but we just can't discuss their diagnosis. Mm-hmm. Students with disabilities are admitted under the same conditions and standards as all students, and the college is not obligated to lower its academic standards in any way. Accommodations are provided really to level the playing field so that students can compete on the same basis as other students. They're not designed to create any kind of special advantage. And that's very important to them. It's often a challenge to come forward and disclose a disability. Sometimes students are nervous about doing that. They don't want to be regarded in any kind of negative light. And so I think it's important to understand how serious that process is, how serious we take it, and how important it is that students receive the accommodations that have been designated and have been communicated through the letter. So confidentiality is something that we all take very seriously. The challenge is that it's very easy to break confidentiality without intending to do so. So certainly a good example would be students bringing you a copy of their accommodation letter at the end of class. Other students are standing around and are very likely to overhear the conversation that you're having. So it would be best to suggest that you wait until other students leave or that you meet with the student in your office. It's important also not to call out in the class and point out in any way that someone is using a note taker or is recording a class or to say, what were your accommodations again? These are just the simple ways that we accidentally sometimes break confidentiality. We also can't talk to our colleagues about a student. Even if you received an accommodation letter, it's important that that information was provided to you, but you are not in a position to communicate that to another colleague. We do have ways that we are holding the student in a broader context, and we will communicate with the dean and with an advisor and others if there's a concern. Now, certainly you can communicate back with me anything that you are concerned about, and we will help to loop others into the process to assist you and the student.